Welcome to Lassoing Leadership. I'm your host, Garth Nichols.
And I'm Jason Rogers, and this is a Lassoing Leadership podcast. But today is not our usual type of episode now, is it, Garth?
That's right, Jason. And over the course of this podcast, we've had some special guests. We've done some bonus episodes, and these have been getting some really great reviews. So we're bringing you yet another one. Today, we're welcoming seasoned podcaster David Coffey from the podcast Teaching Like Ted Lasso. David, welcome. Please introduce yourself to our listeners. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks, Garth. Thanks, Jason. I have been looking forward to doing this since we first started communicating through social media. Been really looking forward to it. So yeah, my name is Dave Coffey. I work at Grand Valley State University. I am a professor of mathematics. I also work in the Design Thinking Academy for a bit of time as the director. Now, though, I'm just really focusing on helping both future and current math teachers, teacher leaders, to think about how to innovate math lessons so that they engage learners.
Dave, thanks for joining us, and we echo your sentiment. We're very, very excited to have you here, and we've been longtime fans of your podcast. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your project before we jump into our project?
Yeah, so we started as sort of like a challenge from the Math Teacher Lounge, much like you all ending challenges. One of the challenges at the end of their seasons was to think about math teaching using another metaphor or simile so that we were getting a different take on the way that we think about teaching mathematics.
Very cool.
Yeah, my colleague John Golden and I had been talking about Ted Lasso and had been talking about all of the themes that we were seeing related to teaching. And we thought, this is a perfect opportunity. We've been challenged. We can meet this challenge. And so we decided to create a podcast where we would talk, we identify 10 themes, talk about those 10 themes, what was going on in Ted Lasso might be related for teaching. We then started thinking about it, and the idea of just listening to our own voices for that much time, we decided it sounded a little limiting, and it gave us an opportunity to reach out and try to bring on some experts in the field, just like you all have done, to talk about sort of their work around those themes. And so it's been a great, we're just finishing up our 10th theme. We haven't always got the people that we wanted, but we've gotten some amazing guests. And it really became, Jason and Garth, about lifting up those teachers' voices. So often we don't hear about all of the good work that's being done in education. And we felt like this was, ultimately our goal was to do that. And then I found your guys' podcast, and it was perfect. It was my drive to and from work is about 20 minutes each way, and so I get a chance to, you all have a nice job, do a nice job of keeping it within that time. And because of both of you have this background in education and focusing on leadership, and like I said, I'd like to think that we at Grand Valley are building teacher leaders of the future. Your podcast really hit me in a lot of places. So I was grateful to be able to find that content, and I'm glad for what you all are doing.
Well, Dave, if it makes you feel any better, we haven't gotten Sudeikis on here yet, or any cast members from the show, so we haven't gotten exactly who we want either. But I can tell you that we continue to pass along your podcast to teachers in our faculty and across Canada. So I know they're learning from you.
Thank you. What I really enjoy about your podcast, David, is you go in depth with your guests.
True.
And one of the things that we know that you're very interested in is kind of the premise of this show. And so with your expertise, we're going to bring our audience a very solid, tangible tool. And it's called the Innovators Compass. And through the expertise of David, we're going to walk you through some of our characters, how we see them, utilizing some or all of the Innovators Compass to help them get unstuck.
Right. And if this was Smartless, I'm going to play Jason Bateman here because I don't know very much about this. I'm going to play, the kind of naive, dumb character in all this. I apologize, Jason, but it's 100% true. Maybe it's got to do with the first name. Anyways, Innovators Compass. David, I know that you love it. And it's something that all leaders, I understand, can use to get unstuck. Why don't you help us understand that a little bit better from your perspective? What does it mean to get unstuck, and tell us a little bit more about the compass?
Well, so the compass, that word comes from the designer of the compass, Ella Ben-Hur. And she talks about, she was actually guest on one of our episodes, 8.1 of the Teaching Like Ted Lasso podcast. And the idea is that you're not always going to pull out the compass to solve a problem. Not everything is a design challenge, and not everything requires a compass. Not everybody's stuck. And so it's important to recognize that this is really about kind of if you find yourself in uncharted territory, or if you find yourself in a rut, right? You want to try and find something new. So I was originally attracted to design thinking because I saw some educators tweeting about it and using it. When I first learned about it, I saw a real connection to what I thought educators ought to do, and yet it also offered some things that I think are often missing in education, and that's creativity and collaboration. And so I really kind of dug into design thinking, but I was always left a little, not underwhelmed, maybe it was overwhelmed. That was it. There's just so much to design thinking, and it was hard to get some of the ideas across in a our professional development or a conference session. And so when Ella introduced me, and I actually heard Ella on a podcast, you're seeing a theme. I may be a little podcast. I also listen to Smartless. I was actually listening to Smartless on the way in. I hope there's not as much swearing. But anyway, so I was listening to Ella, and she introduced this really simple, not easy, simple, concrete tool that I found that I can share with somebody in an hour or less, and they can have at least some of the, mostly the questions I think are so powerful to be able to find sort of ways forward, to find ways unstuck.
Right. And what are those, Dave? What are those fundamental questions? Like what questions do you ask people you're trying to coach or work through this process?
Yeah, so all of this is on innovatorscompass.org. It's all, Ella makes it all free. She just requests that if you're finding stuff that's useful, that you let her know through the website. Those questions, Jason, are who's involved. So we put people at the center of our work.
Love that.
What's happening and why? And those are observations. And if you had a physical compass that you were looking at innovatorscompass.org, that would be in the lower left. What matters most? Those are principles, and those are up in the upper right. What ways are there? Those are ideas, and those are, the principles are in the upper left. Ideas, what ways are there in the upper right? And then what is a step to try? Those are experiments, and those are in the lower right. And a lot of leaders say that they do those things, and I would say most people do. Again, that's part of the beauty of Ella's work. What she does is she makes sure that we're attending to all of those things all of the time, and not just hit and miss as we're doing that work.
That's very cool. I think back to attending a NACE conference. That's a big private school conference in San Francisco once. And instead of attending NACE, I decided to skip the conference and pop over to IDEO. And I actually got to meet Tim Brown, and then went over to Stanford D School for an afternoon as well, and missed almost the whole conference. But I was completely enamored by this idea of design thinking and what it could mean for education. And I think anybody who's looking at different ways of solving problems, it's a great starting point. And so, Garth, I know you too have been a proponent and practitioner of design thinking for quite some time. That's right?
Yeah. So Jason, my sort of partner in crime, Justin Medved, and I founded Cohort 21. We've talked about it a little bit on this podcast. You guys
are called the Fly Boys, aren't you?
Thanks for digging that one up. We apply, as David said, there's a lot to it. So we tend to apply the mindset, some of the protocols, and certainly the overall sort of meta process of design thinking.
Right on. Okay, so I think we've kind of moved through a little bit of design thinking. So why don't we go to choosing a character inside Lasso? Bring this back to Lasso, and consider what it means for them to be stuck as a leader. Okay, I want each of us choose one, and take our listeners through their journey, particularly in season 2, and what it looked like from this design thinking or compass perspective. Garth, I feel like it's your turn to start. Why don't you go for it?
Thanks, Jason. And you always love to volunteer me to go first, so I really appreciate that, particularly with our esteemed guest here. But so we're going to walk through. I'm going to walk through Sam's journey, Sam Obisanya, and how he got stuck. And maybe I'll try to choose some of those questions, those tools that David went through to show how he got unstuck. So in season 2 of Ted Lasso, Sam faces a very significant challenge that leaves him feeling stuck in both moral and ethical spots. When he discovers that the main sponsor of the football team is sponsored by a corporation involved in unethical practices. And this revelation is particularly troubling for Sam because the sponsor's actions are causing harm in his home country of Nigeria. So he's stuck between his love for the game, a certain level of simplicity, that football can just be football, but also realizing that the game is a business and it comes with very real complications and consequences. So he's feeling a strong sense of responsibility, internal conflict, and he struggles to find a way to address the issue. So this is how he is stuck. It gets more complicated because of the role that his father plays in this, when his father, who Sam really looks up to, says he is disappointed in him and kind of abruptly hangs up the phone. So he feels torn between loyalties to his team, to his family, to his country. And so I think this is where the Innovators Compass comes in and sort of layering that on top of this episode. So, people, principles, observations, ideas, experiments. Sam considers the people involved and those affected, including his teammates, the club's reputation, the sponsor, and the people suffering due to the sponsor's actions in Nigeria. And of course, his own family and his relationship with them. And this is where he really reflects on his principles and what he stands for, which helps him gain clarity on what actions he should take. So we've talked a lot about values on this show already, and I think values really are an essential part of the Innovators Compass. So he observes the situation, not for too long. He does some research, as much as you do research on a sitcom here, that the writers could show. But then it hits him. He decides in a moment of inspiration to make an experiment. What's one small step? His is a bit of a grand gesture. He takes a public stand. He does not prototype this idea by first discussing with his teammates or the potential actions, but rather he goes it alone. And he announces to his team his intentions. So he's going to cover the sponsor's logo on the jersey during a match. And that's a significant and bold move. So I don't know what the Innovators Compass would say to this in terms of the experiment. But if we drill down, I don't know if he could have relied on it, but in that moment, he had the trust and support of his teammates. And my favorite, Jamie Tart, leads the way. He says, we all have to wear the same uniform. So he tapes it up. But also Rebecca backs him as well. And so he leans into, what he knows about his organization, I think. And ultimately his actions lead to a much larger conversation with the team and the community. So Sam's journey in season 2, is kind of aided by some of the elements of the Innovators Compass, showcases his growth as a character, how he's able to navigate complex moral issues. And I think ask himself those key questions about what really matters and who matters. Those are the key questions I see him really wrestling with.
Wow, Garth, I think that's unbelievable. Nice recap. And I am inspired by how much you love design thinking and how much you've thought about this character. But truly, I think, as we think about design thinking and supporting our leadership and our leadership initiatives, whether it's change initiatives or personal development or value development, you can see how that through line really does help Sam in his own journey. And thanks for that. That was a pretty cool take. David, I can hardly wait to hear yours. If Garth's got all that, what do you got?
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow there, Garth.
I'd say.
I think that you hit it right on the. Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the writers didn't know about the compass when they were writing this, and that as Garth pointed out, there's the constraints that follow any sitcom, any television show. However, I think again, this is the power of the compass: is that we can see these journeys and recognize these important parts, these as you were saying, Jason, some of these through lines that regardless of what we're trying to solve, what problems we're trying to solve, how we're stuck, if we can identify these 5 things, we can do that work. It's hard to pick just one character, especially in this season. It's the second season of what I've heard the creators talk about is always a 3-season arc, which puts it smack dab in the middle. What Brene Brown calls the second act, the messy middle. And so it's not surprising that we have lots and lots of characters who are lost. In fact, Ted himself talks about fairy tales, and I think it's the Rainbow episode, and how fairy tales don't start or end in the dark forest. But that's right smack in the middle of the sucker, and that's where they all feel, in that they feel sort of stuck and lost.
Hey, Dave, if it makes you feel any better, Garth can't pick a favorite character either. So, you guys have that in common.
Well, I can pick a favorite character. I just have a hard time picking because all of the stories are so rich, which I think is what makes the show such a wonderful show. Because Garth, though, did such a nice job walking through the compass and showing an example, a positive example, I feel like I'd like to, do a more holistic view of the compass. And instead of thinking about each individual part, looking at maybe sides, halves, and look at what happens when even somebody who goes through it but isn't paying attention to their values, who isn't working collaboratively, sort of can go down a dangerous road and end up, maybe following the dark path out of the forest. Still, maybe.
Are you gonna talk about Nate? Maybe
I am talking about.
There you go. All right.
Good guess. So Nate has an interesting arc in this one, and I think that if we were to look at his story during this season, and let's just start on the right-hand side of the compass, ideas and experiments. Nate is a great idea guy, and he is all about the experiments, right? He even talks about in Man City how he has all of these ideas and he holds on to them till just the right minute so that it looks like he's spontaneous. And so he's going through what's on the compass, the future side of the work, and I'd say he's pretty good at it. When it comes to the center people, he certainly knows the people. He's been around AFC Richmond for a long, long time, and he knows the people. He's observed the people. He's much more, it seems, even an observer than someone who puts himself out. And this is on the left side, the past and present, where I think Nathan has the most problem is in that upper left part, the principles. He says on a couple of occasions, what he wants is to be the boss. What he wants is to be a celebrity, and all the trappings, or most of the trappings at least, that are associated with that. What he wants to be, at one point when they are talking about funerals and if he were to come back, what he'd want to come back as. He wanted to come back, I think it was a tiger, because he wants to be so powerful, right?
Yeah.
This is where I think we have the problem, is that he's sort of missed out on what he really wants, right? He wants to be respected, and he thinks these other things are going to give him respect, and he's ignoring the ways that people do respect him, the way that people do connect with him. He's not always listening. Beard and Roy and Keeley are giving him some advice about some things, Becca as well, but he is so clear that he wants to be the boss, and he thinks that with that are going to come, and I mean, the sad interesting thing is, right, he does become the boss at the end of the season. He is the manager of which one is it? West Ham. He's the manager of West Ham, right?
Yeah.
but at what cost? And so,
Yep.
I think that this is a great example of being able to follow somebody's story and seeing where he's hitting all those points. But if you're missing out on that real human-centered and what he's doing, the damage that he's doing to people, as he think about Colin and Ted and the rest of the team. Yeah, I think that there's another good example of how the compass sort of shows what the story is. However, back to what Garth was talking about, the mindsets, I'm not sure he's real familiar with mindsets of being human-centered, radical collaboration, and really being monitoring, kind of thinking about the process.
Yeah. That's great.
David, that's deep. And I think, as I listen to the two of you talk about, design thinking in the compass and leadership development, I can't help but think about Roy Kent.
Of course.
I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding. But truthfully, as I think about Roy Kent, I want to put forward our leadership challenge or our homework right now, Garth, if you'll allow me.
Sure.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and run Roy Kent through the, compass workshop that the two of you have just run on your two characters and get a better sense of, where his pitfalls are and where his strengths are. Second to that, once I've gotten familiar with the process, I'm going to do it on myself and take a look at it that way. So I think just layering those two on is going to be really, really powerful. So thank you for that. And I can't wait to spend a little bit more time with my two favorite people, Roy Kent and myself. So let's, what do you think, Garth? How's that?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Let's get going.
Awesome. So what's next, Garth? I think you had a little action plan for us.
So why don't we get a little vulnerable here and share something that we are stuck with? So we could give some feed forward from the Innovators Compass to help us get unstuck. Jason, you first.
Thanks, Garth. I think it was a little vulnerable a moment ago about my love of Roy Kent, but I'm happy to get on that. So I'm truly stuck on this kind of bigger picture, the continual pivot of the role of headship. It's not to say that it's insurmountable, but I think it's sticky in this role. It reminds me of a conversation I once had with a great head of school from Canada. His name is Paul Kitchen. He's an absolute legend of leadership. And Garth, you got 2 minutes for me to share just a real quick story about Paul and I?
David, it doesn't matter, right? Jason, just go for it.
All right. I will keep it brief, though. I think it's worth sharing, Garth.
I've never said no to you before. So here we go.
Here we go. So after a really tough year, about 5 or 6 years ago, that was filled with tragedy, challenge and transition, I asked Paul a question. Paul had been head for over 20 years at this point, and I said to him, I just need to know when this job gets easier. And any idea what he said?
No.
Yeah, it's exactly it. He said, Paul's exact quote was, "It never does. Every year is a new chapter, new challenges, new roles, new opportunities. Think of it as a career volume, a volume of a career, and with distinct chapters that represent each year. And with that, each year, I find I'm figuring out what's required of me and how to adapt and get the best for myself, my team, and ultimately the organization." So, in the long run, I think it's really daunting to look at each of these years as places to get stuck, but as you contextualize them and contextualize your own self in that leadership and start to understand what's important in this, I think that's a question I come back to, David, in the compass. I think it gets easier. And I think having that broad view, which Paul allowed for me to take, has been helpful and allowed me to get unstuck.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting in that, Jason, and again, if we use the compass as a framework, to really paying attention, one of the observations that I think is useful to do is to reach out to people who have had similar experiences and hear their stories, and reach out and be able to take from those stories and sort of work our way forward. I really feel as though one of the things that that I've had to come to embrace, and the compass does it. I love the idea that the compass kind of creates also this image of a journey, is that we are on a journey, right? That, and again, if we think about this 3-act structure,
Mm-hmm.
the know, the grow, and the show, it's the hero's journey. And it's the work that Joseph Campbell talks about.
Mm.
So,
Yep.
so being able to think about, in my own case, I'll give you a brief story. My wife of 27 years now, she's
Oh,
going to,
congratulations.
I hope she does. She does listen, but I hope she doesn't. Anyway, she, at the very beginning, she had 3 children from another marriage, and she promised me at the very beginning that all she could promise was that it was going to be an adventure. And one of the things that we got into the habit of doing is anytime things got a little crazy, we'd start humming the Indiana Jones theme song as a reminder that it's just an adventure. And I share this story with my future teacher leaders to remind them that teaching is also going to be an adventure, that it's always going to be hard, but it's also going to be rewarding, and it's also going to have some payoff, and mostly it's going to be an adventure.
Wow. Well, David, you and I have something in common we didn't know. My spouse doesn't listen to this either. And Garth, aside from being stuck in this podcast, which you thought was going to be 3 episodes, now it's 25. This is our 25th episode. Why don't you tell us about where you're stuck, if you don't mind?
Sure. Well, David, I love that strategy, right? That callback to that song. It's a reminder. It's something you two share. I really, really appreciate you sharing that. And then, Paul Kitchen is a legend, and that advice is really critical, that you can't expect things to get easier, especially when you're in a position of leadership. For me, I'm in a position of senior leadership at my school, and yet I still interact with students on a daily basis. And recently, I'm kind of stuck on, we offer so many programs to our students, global education programs, and I'm really stuck on a couple of things here. One is, accessibility to these programs. How do we make sure that that all students have access to developing these skills of global competencies and whatnot? And then for those kids that do have the capacity to take this on, but we don't have enough spots, I constantly get stuck in this idea of how to say no, not yet, in a way that gets heard by students, in a way that honors them putting themselves out there for these opportunities, like studying abroad, and keep them engaged through feedback. So usually, leaders are dealing with adults. Here I am talking with students from grades 9 to 12, 7 to 12. And I still sometimes get stuck on how best to do this. And like Paul Kitchen said to you, the students that we taught are not the students we teach, right? Their needs change. The way we give feedback needs to change too. So those are two pieces I'm kind of stuck with. And what I really like about the compass is the first, 2 main questions for me are who's involved, like who am I talking to, and then what are my principles. So when I'm giving them feedback, it's from a values-based perspective and it's from a principled-based perspective.
And I think what's really powerful in all this, and a part of this conversation I want to bring full circle is in our leadership, sometimes we need just a place to start. We need a tool to go to. It's like the Indiana Jones song, or it's, Garth, you talk about empathizing and trying to get to the principles and values of your problem and solving the problem. I think, the compass or design thinking or any of these things are the starting tool to support us in our leadership through, easy and hard times, frankly. Like sometimes innovation is a lot of fun and solving problems is a lot of fun. Other times it's not so fun. We're trying to get over big challenges like you're talking about, Garth. And so I want to really thank David for you joining us on this show. It's been a ball to have you here, and Garth, as always, it's great to be a part of your conversation too.
Yeah, and thanks to our listeners for sticking with this longer episode. So here we go. But David, indulge us one last time. We'd like to leave our listeners with a bit of a leadership challenge. Can you maybe provide one for us?
Well, I think Jason got us started, right? I'm just going to build off that. And I think that what we're talking about here is trying to identify a place that we might be stuck, and then thinking about using the compass to go through that. And again, don't fall into Nate's trap. It helps if you have a partner to do this with and to help ask those questions and to maybe give some critical feedback at some point. And then at the very least, go and if you're still not quite sure, maybe the smaller experiment might be to go to innovatorscompass.org and look at it. Ella has so many examples of how people have used this around the world to solve problems, from how should I do my day to how can we help get to things in Africa. And I guess I would like to say, you all have kind of shared your challenge. Right now, I feel stuck about, I have this awesome opportunity to be the director of our study abroad in Africa. I've gone a couple times. I love Africa. I don't know why I would say no, but I am stuck because I have always shied away from administrative sorts of deals. And so one of the things listening to you and listening to your podcast has encouraged me to think about, I know I can be a leader in this sense. I know I can be an administrator in this sense. I just need to sort of share. It's also about changing the story, right? I need to change the story about what it means to be a leader, and how can I do that in a way that maintains my sense of adventure, my sense of creativity, and definitely my sense of collaboration. So I do appreciate this podcast. I appreciate this opportunity to work through, these sticky issues. It's always better to do it with colleagues and friends than all by myself.
High praise, David. Thank you. Thanks so much. And if Jason and I had the creative capabilities to do this, we would start piping in the theme song to Indiana Jones for you. to say go for it. David, we thank you so much. I'm going to accept that leadership challenge. To our listeners, thanks for hanging in on this episode. Tell us what you think about it. We're still trying. We have ambitions, like Jason mentioned at the start, to get Sudeikis on here. So we need your support. So David, will you take us home with our tagline?
Yeah. Until next time, keep leading that lasso way.
All right. Thank you, David, for your time today. Thanks.
Appreciate it.